Hello, BookTube. I don't know if this is working. I believe it could be. Kinda. Let's change it and do this. I either have it on the edge of my desk or further on the desk. Because right now it's on the edge of the desk, the camera, and I don't know if this is working because I'm kind of having to lean like over the edge of the desk. So we're gonna look at this. I'm having to use my phone as a camera, and I'm having to lean my, because obviously being a blind booktuber, it's really hard to film. So the way I can do it is look at my phone with the front-facing camera and putting the phone against something bigger, like something that's not gonna fall over. So like right now, I've got around the bottle of like orange, like Fanta sort of stuff, which isn't really great skills, but it's what I have. And if I don't do this, then there's no BookTube, and that would be sad. But I hope if I actually face properly round this way, actually might help the situation. God. So anyway, I have decided to do a monthly TBR video. If I could edit, then I would. A monthly reading wrap up, and January is not over, so I'm not going to start the new year with January wrap up. I'm going to start in January by doing a December. I wanted to say TBR because I just do. Yeah, I want to do a December reading wrap up of the things that I finished reading in December, because there was quite a few of them. Perhaps not as many as there is in January. That's definitely true. There's not as many as there is in January. But that's not the point. It's still good what I've read, and I'm pleased with the variations of books that I read. So for statistics, I read one fantasy series, which isn't, so technically 3 books of fantasy, but technically that's also one series. I read 1 historical fiction, and I read 1 middle grade book, which is definitely not regular content for me, not regular reading for me. I decided to give a middle grade book a go, because of the fact that it's a lot of people, even though they're adults, still read middle grade books just because they're interesting and it makes you think about kind of the things we're teaching young people today. I'm young myself, but I still see that I can be a role model to kids 10 years younger than me, because, 22, so, middle graders 10 years younger than me will be reading this stuff. So that's mainly what I read. I have been reading other things at the time, which I finished in early January, but I only really finished those ones in December. I would include a couple that I finished like on the 2nd of January or something, but that's cheating. So the first book that I read in December, or finished in December, because I was messing it up by having too many books on the go, that I just couldn't finish anything, and it was just taking me ages to get through anything, and I was just not really focusing on any of my books and giving them the attention that they needed. So that's kind of what I did, and I want to make that better this year. I want to make sure that I don't do that again, because I want to be able to focus on a book and read it and give it the love that it needs. So the first book that I did really pay attention to in December, which is good because I've been trying to work my backed up book queue. I've been trying to fix that. So but instead of fixing it, I kind of took a break from my current series I was reading, and I read Where the Cruel Dads Sing by Delia Owens. One of my most recent videos is a book review of this book. and it is a brilliant one. I really enjoyed this book. Honestly, it was fantastic. I won't go into huge amounts of detail because I've already done that in another book review. All I will say is it follows a young woman who is about a young girl who was abandoned as a young child in a shack in this sort of marshy town in deep south North Carolina in the 1960s, and how she grew up defying all the odds and the kind of surviving, despite all the prejudice, despite being abandoned, despite having to teach herself, despite having only nature as her friend, and how her life was stunning. And so much happened. And there's also a small murder mystery going on of who killed Chase Andrews, who was a quarterback of the football team. Was it football or was it baseball? Something like that. I don't care. I don't know. That's not important. But he was like a quarterback. He was like newly married. He was like one of the town's like golden boys, I guess. And he ends up dead. And everyone goes, "Oh, she did it because she's the creepy girl who lives in the marsh." And we have to find out what happens as well as kind of growing her story through her life, which I enjoyed more than the murder kind of trial sort of thing. I rated this 4 stars, and I loved it. And I know it's very popular right now. It's in a lot of the charts. I went to a bookshop with my support worker on Wednesday, and looked at all the books that were kind of trending, and when I saw that one, I sort of gasped and went, "I read that one!" And then I got really excited because I've never seen a physical copy of the book of books, because obviously I have to read them as ebooks for my for accessibility. So yeah, that's basically what I did. I really enjoyed it, yeah. So that was really good. If you like historical novels, I think you'll like this. Trigger warnings for kind of childhood trauma, domestic abuse, attempted sexual harassment. But those things are dealt with very well. They're not overly explicit, and it doesn't really continue terribly through the book. It's mainly about this girl's life, and I don't think those things are mentioned too frequently for it to be, I didn't find it too difficult to read, and I get emotional by a lot of things, but yeah, obviously if those are triggers for you, I just wanted to warn you. The next book I read was completely different, and that was my middle grade read. And that was The Forgotten Girl by India Hill Brown. I should know this. India Hill. With my Amazon thing though? Don't think so. I've forgotten her name. That's really bad. Alexa, The Forgotten Girl.
I found something about The Forgotten Girl. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, sure.
The Forgotten Girl is a book by Kerry Barrett.
That's not
her. It was
her.
published on the 29th of September 2016.
No.
Here is a summary.
No.
A fantastic and engaging read.
Alexa.
Kerry Barrett.
The Forgotten Girl by India.
Sorry, I don't know that.
I think it's India Hill Brown. If I could pause this in the tech and edit, then I would. Maybe that's a note to self for next month's read books, because I should remember the author's name. I'm pretty sure it's India Hill Brown. I will check that later, and I will kick myself if it's wrong. But it's a middle grade book. which was a nice wintry read. And I never really read middle grade books, as I mentioned before, but I know a lot of my favourite booktubers just still occasionally read little middle grade books. And I read this one and I really enjoyed it. It was only released in 2019. I really, Where the Crawdad Sing was released in 2018, by the way. Yeah, this one is a 2019 wintry release, and it's really interesting. So it's basically about this girl called Iris and her best friend Daniel, and they have to do a school project, and they're like, we found out everything about our town anyway, so what can we do is different? And basically they basically go into the snow to play at night, which is kind of not allowed by their families, and they find a grave. Lovely, that's what you want to find when you're frolicking in the snow, having fun, throwing snowballs at night when you should be in bed. And the story unwinds, and it basically, not only does it feel wintry and kind of slightly Christmassy and kind of homely and nice, it has a nice balance of like the characters feeling nice and safe for their family, which is quite nice to read about because it's nice to have kids with such a nice family, and Iris does have a lovely family, but then her friend Daniel does have his mum's a single parent, and his story's a little bit sad, and seeing him deal with his grief and loss, I think that's really interesting for middle grade readers to read that and to experience. Maybe, if they have experienced this kind of trauma in their own lives, they might say, well, this character's dealing with this. And it's also how this character, Daniel, deals with his friends, how his friends deal with Daniel's loss, and how, friendships can kind of be affected by these things, and people change because of what they've been through, and, because of recovery. But that's a part of it that I liked, which was educational or useful. The other part which was good was the project that the two middle graders did was basically about unmarked graveyards, or kind of bad, like kind of uncared for graveyards in their town for black people, because the white people had the nice graveyard with a nice, all the nice headstones and stuff, and the black people had a really kind of overgrown, kind of, most of the graves are marked, like a really kind of they had their own graveyard, which was like in the middle of a woods. It wasn't really a proper graveyard. It was just not great. I can't remember exactly what the name for it was, but it's kind of, there's discrimination between black and white people, and how that happened. And basically they are finding out about this situation that actually years ago their town was so against black people. Sorry for the noise, my parents' dogs are barking and it's really annoying me. I've got a headache, so it's annoying me. But yes, how they find out about the discrimination and racism that happened in their town, as people were against black people being buried with white people, and the two of them were like, this isn't right, and they do a project about it, and it's kind of how they're spreading awareness, which is also then spreading awareness to young people reading the book. And they also want to integrate the graveyard, or kind of, they want the graveyards obviously are integrated now, but they wanted to spread awareness about the fact that they were disintegrated before. And I made it sound more complicated than it is, but it's quite cute, spooky, just the right amount of spooky, just the right amount of cozy Christmassiness, if that's a word, just the right amount of kind of history, just the right amount of emotion, and it was all bundled up in this cute little middle grade novel, and I really enjoyed it, and I whizzed through it, and okay, I'm not a middle grader, but I still think it made me think. And obviously as an adult, I'm training in theatre, but I want to be some kind of theatre therapist, maybe working in hospitals or working with young people, or a youth worker, or maybe a teacher. And you know what? Maybe I'm not that age, but one day I'll be working with kids that age, and maybe I can help them by picking up little things from those books. Okay, so I think I've gone too long about that. Then I finally finished the Caravel series by Stephanie Garber. I had heard about this series for a long time. Loads of people were screeching about how amazing Caravel was. I was curious, and then I picked it up one day and thought, let's just read the blurb. And then I was sold when I read the blurb. Kind of travelling magical circusy kind of thing. Magic spells, like different stuff. Not really spells, but like magic kind of like magical places which are like bewitched by the magic, and the legend who's this immortal who had this amazing kind of travelling band of performers and everything. And I was sold, and I picked it up and I read the 3 books over this kind of winter time. I didn't read them all in December. I read, I think, 1 in October, 1 in November, 1 in December. So the first book follows Scarlet, who is meant to be married, and her father, who is a nasty kind of person. He's very cruel to his daughters. And he basically wants Scarlet to marry this count. And Scarlet's writing to him and stuff. But her younger sister Donatella is like, father's making you marry him. He's probably evil. He'll probably hurt you. He's probably a really horrible person. And she basically gets them to go to Caravel. And a sailor called Julian takes Scarlet, kidnaps Scarlet, takes her to the boat to go to the island for Caravel. When she gets there, she thinks her sister's waiting for her, and she's not. So Scarlet's like, wait, I'm on this island. I need to rescue my sister. I can't believe we're doing this. But then she finds out the way she can rescue her sister is to be in this Caravel. She gets to play. So Caravel is not just a kind of circus. Caravel is a game. So all the performers will dress up as different things. They'll have real magic. They'll do, and spaces across the whole island. And you have to kind of find clues and do different things. You also get to explore this magical place, and it's quite creepy, quite fun, quite exciting. Almost feels a little bit like fairy tale land, honestly. It's cute, but creepy at the same time. And Scarlet's got to find Donatella. And I loved it. Scarlet is a reluctant heroine. She just wants to be safe from bad people with her sister. And yet her sister makes her go on this adventure. And she grows so much as a person. She kind of is forced to be around this guy Julian, and she's like embarrassed by it, and like thinking people are gonna think things about her, and it's just you see her grow from this kind of very bashful, very protective young woman to someone else who's a lot more brave and coming into herself more. And I loved it, and there were so many twists and turns. Caravel's not what it seems. Then Julian is not what he seems, and nothing is what you think it's gonna be. Things that happen, you don't quite expect it. So many twists and turns, and it's so good. The second book, Legendary, follows Donatella, her sister, as she goes on her own Caravel. There's an extra Caravel. She goes on her own Caravel game, and it just follows her. I don't like Donatella as much. I'm not really keen on her. She kind of, I would say she is kind of like I don't believe in love. Love is, like, I'm never gonna fall in love. Like, I'm not meant to have a happy ever after. Like, I'm meant to be the girl who everyone forgets. So then she meets someone and she's, sorry, but again, my background was my parents' dogs are fighting. I just realised it. I'm so used to hearing it that you're probably like, what the hell? And she's like, oh, I need to, I'm never gonna fall in love. Like, happy ever after, that's not for me. Like, I'm not meant to do that. And she's like, goes to parties and probably kisses people and doesn't really have a care for anything. Then she's like, actually, you know what? I really want attention from someone. I want someone to love me. I want someone to care for me. I want someone to be there for me all the time and, like, come for me. And, like, when someone does, she's like, it's just, she's always, like, running off after him, just, like, following him. Like, what's he doing? Where's he going? Why isn't he with me? Or, like, and the third book follows both sisters. That's Finale by Stephanie Garber. And it follows both of them. I have a slight issue with that. Most of the chapters seem to be with Donatella. And yet, like, I feel like I don't really understand why. I mean, towards the end, Scarlett got more of her own chapters. But, like, Donatella's chapters would be, like, really big, and then there would, like, be, like, a 5-page chapter from, like, Scarlett. And I'm just like, all she's doing is not really finishing the story. All she's doing is not solving anything. She's just running after the guy again. Like, and then she's like, oh, I don't need him. And then she's like, yeah, I do need him. And then someone else pays her attention. There's a lot of dark people there. And if anyone else is there, pays her attention, she'll run after them, and then she'll go, wait, I don't want to be with them after all, I want to be with them. And she's just a bit of a mess. I mean, she's sweet and she's quite funny sometimes, but yeah, there's just so much to this story. I tried not to give any spoilers with this. I don't think I gave any spoilers. I didn't really mention many characters apart from the main two girls. Nothing is as it seems throughout the whole book, so I didn't really give I didn't give any plot away. You might think, oh, I mentioned too much about the characters, but I think there's a lot more in this book than I could even cram into a review. So that's basically it. Those are the books that I read: the series, the middle grade, and the historical. January's book wrap up will be a lot more, because I finished quite a lot and it's not over the middle of January yet. It's the 10th of January and I've finished 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 books already. So expect some good stuff for the end of the month. I have got some more ideas of book topics for this channel for the near future. However, I'm going to Spain in less than a week for 5 days, so that will possibly put my book reading and stuff on hold. So yeah, without further ado, thank you for watching if you have been, and I will definitely be back soon, possibly at the beginning of next week with something else.